All right, so what we're looking at today is our June 2020 release into the CAMS environment. So we've got a lot of really cool things today to go over, and then just some things that we've been working on for quite a while that I'm excited to announce that are finally fixed. So in getting started with some of the big features in this release, if you hover over your management tab there, now there are securities around these pages. So if you hover over management tab and you don't see these new homeowner activity and service provider activity options, those do live under settings, roles, and there's a management section. So if you do Control F, management, and we've got these new securities here for homeowner and service provider activity. So if you recall, in our last release, we released this user activity functionality. And what this user activity functionality is doing, specifically on the activity by date and type page, is it's showing us the number of times that people message or step an action item. So this was showing us activity for all users, including homeowners and service providers. So what we did is we just broke out the homeowner stuff into its own specific page, user stuff into its own specific page, and that service provider stuff into its own specific page. So we're having better transparency around what's going on. So that's the first thing. So let's stop there real quick. Anyone have questions on how user activity works or what we did in this release? Does that make sense to everyone? So I'm thinking that we should probably allow managers, and maybe we roll this out kind of slowly, so this is something to talk about internally, but this homeowner activity screen is going to show us for specific associations what homeowners are doing. Right, so is Connie still doing things? Yeah, so Connie was in, and we can see that she logged in at 4:11 on the 15th. If we go to this activity by date and type, we can see what Connie was doing when she logged in. So these types of things I think is going to be really helpful for managers, because it seems like managers are the ones that are wanting to find this stuff most of the time, or you got board members asking managers about it. So it might be worthwhile for you guys to go ahead and give managers access to that page. So any questions on that before I move on? It's super cool because it's going to allow us, when we're dealing with those. So I guess thinking through like customer service, the CS department probably should have access to this page as well, thinking through all the times where they're going to research like what happened on an owner's account. Did the owner do this? Like this lets us see when those owners are logging in and what they're doing. If we don't have any questions on that, I will move on to the next big thing.
Hey, BD, this is Chris.
Hey,
I just had a question. I noticed when that was rolled out that I had access to that, but now it's gone. Is that big security level of who's going to have access to that?
Yeah. So settings, roles. So I think that's really the question here for CAMS to decide is who should have access to what right now. So I think that by default, we pulled that access from most users except for like our administrators. So that's really the question now is, who do we want to give access to? Homeowner activity, service provider activity. I imagine user activity is probably going to be specific to just like regional managers and system admins. But these screens here, I can't really think of a reason why you wouldn't give managers and CS folks and real ACMs and anyone else access to these screens.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does that answer your question, Chris? And do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, that's fine. I know I'd seen it pop up and I thought it was pretty cool, but I know some things probably user activity would be more for like Deanna King for my regional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why I was hoping that, and I haven't seen if she's jumped in yet. That's why I was hoping Kathy was going to be on this. Yeah, she's on here. Okay. So yeah, AJ and Kathy, this would just be a good internal discussion around which roles do you want to have access to which pages.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's going to be a lot more helpful for us instead of having to scroll through all that stuff under the one page. Any more questions on that before we go to the next one?
I do be kind of unrelated, but on that screen that you are, what's that thing that says financial reporting? Financial report.
This is for our management billing. So this isn't.
Oh, the management billing. Okay.
Yeah. So we're not we're still building that stuff out. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I didn't see anything with that description in particular. Thank you.
No. That's a good question, Natalia. And as you've probably learned by now, our development team, as we start to build stuff out, they'll go ahead a lot of times and throw a role security in there to accommodate some of the things that they're building. It doesn't yet tie to anything, and that's an example of that right there. So good question. Any other questions before we move on? Good one so far. All right. Well, I'm excited to get to the next one here. So this next one is basically just new inspection functionality. So you know how with our ARC request process, we can define the admin role of our ARCs, and we make that admin role the ARC chair, and that gives the ARC chair the ability to approve and decline requests, but everyone else can only message. So we basically just did the same thing with our inspections, right? So with our compliance, with our violation inspection category specifically, you can define an admin role like compliance chair, and that role will have the ability to approve and decline inspections in the web portal. So it's the same concept as ARCs, it's just for violation inspections. So that way you can have maybe your board view all your violation inspections, but you want your compliance chair to be the one approving and declining. Does that make sense to everyone?
Is that going to do anything with access like on the website? Like when they log in, you know, ARCs can see the ARCs under their action items. Is that going to change anything with that if they do have somebody set up as a chair?
No, it's not going to change any of that stuff. So this is how I imagine you guys will probably roll this out. And I'm trying to remember here what you guys called your review inspection. We'll just go back and find it real quick. Compliance inspection board approval. So for any of those associations that are using this particular process where you guys have the boards going into review, what you'll be able to do is, and the way I see people rolling this out is creating a role called compliance chair. So it'd be a new role, and then you only give that role to the specific board members or committee members that you want to be approving and declining requests, right? So that means now you can let all of these folks see those, and when the inspection is in board review, all the folks with these roles will be able to see those. It's just that the folks with whatever is set up as that admin role will be able to approve and decline. So you'll probably want to create a new role for that.
I think it's going to take some initial testing, because I believe the inspection process with the board review is set up so that the board always has the ability to do it unless there is a compliance committee, and it's only sent to the compliance committee, not the board.
Well, the way that it's set up right now, when it's in board review, it gets sent to all of these folks.
Correct, but the board members, each of them have the ability to approve it.
But that's changing now. So it's just going to be the folks with that admin role.
Okay.
So it'll be just that specific role that can approve or decline. So you can define, like, do you want that to be board? Do you want to create a new role for that? If so, what do you want to call it? It doesn't matter what the role is. You just define it as the admin role, and then that then makes this function exactly the same way as ARCs. So I definitely agree, Addison. Definitely worth testing in some scenarios to roll out, but through all the testing that we've done, it's been working really nicely.
Okay.
So again, that's going to allow you to define not everyone on the board, but specific folks have the ability to do that.
Great.
Any questions on that? I guess that's more specific to the ACMs and the managers out there, but if you don't have questions, let me know.
I do have a question. When people respond to the compliance letters, will that go just to the manager still, or will it go to an inspector or somebody else?
They are geared to only go to the manager and inspector.
Yeah, so the technical answer is whoever's defined in the reply to on that step that they're applying to, which, as Addison said, is inspector and ACM for every step except for...
That's the old action item.
You're using this guy. So manager, inspector, manager, inspector, manager, inspector. So issues with the configuration of this action item, kind of outside of the topic of today's conversation, but you guys need to have a reply to in the resolved and closed steps of this action item.
It's
Otherwise,
geared to step into owner response.
right.
That's how it's set up.
Right, but we're going to take a little detour for a second here today, guys. Are we indeed? Yeah, so it's compliance. We're going to select this account. Got the brand new owner. We're going to go to his login. Mimic him. And then we're going to go to his open issues so we can see that compliance letter. So there's that compliance letter. It's in the courtesy letter step. So we're going to go and we're going to step that to resolved. Go back into my items, refresh that. See that it's set to resolved. If I'm an owner and I want to reply to that, I don't have the ability to reply because no send to is defined on the step. Does that make sense, AJ?
Yeah, it does.
All right. So the owner response will work if they send in an email. If they respond to this via email, the action item will reopen to the owner response step. But if they try to respond through the portal, they don't have the ability to because we're not defining who to respond to on that step. So your manager and inspector, your owner response step should probably correspond to your reply tos and your closing steps.
Easy fix.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So took a little detour there, but that'll be an easy cleanup there. All right, so let's jump back into the release stuff. This one's pretty cool. It's gonna solve a lot of headaches that I've seen lately. And so, you know how when you're sorting in Vanica, let's say I'm looking, and I don't want to look at Crow Creek here. Let's go to Presidential Valley. If you're sorting for something, a lot of times what I've been finding is folks will have a sort active, and then they'll hide the sort, and then they'll not realize why the screen isn't yielding any results, right? So right now I'm filtering to Washington. If I hide that city that has an active filter, Vanica is now clearing that out. So see how I've got 45 items here? When I hide a filter that's active, that filter is reset. So that's going to alleviate those concerns where folks are going in and searching for something and not finding it, and then AJ has to respond and say, well, you had this filter on. Does that make sense?
That's awesome.
So little thing,
Small, but effective.
yes.
Man, I think that was on my top 5 video. I'm going to have to redo that now.
Keeping you busy, AJ. All right, so so yeah, so that's a simple one, but I think it's going to make a lot of people's lives easier. All right, so another quick one here. Let's go to association insurance. I know this is only touching a few of you guys, but I wanted to make sure you guys saw this. We do now have the ability to export our association insurance. So if we're filling out our association insurance, we have the ability to either export just what's on this association or all associations. Now, one thing to know about this all associations is it does correspond to the user's responsibilities. So I can only export associations that I have access to, right? But who is doing insurance for you guys these days?
We have an insurance administrator.
Joyce is doing that? Okay. So if Joyce, I would assume Joyce has access to, in her role, to probably all associations, right?
Yeah.
So in her scenario, she'll be able to export all associations insurance because she has access to all, right? But if maybe I only have access to Presidential Valley, when I go to click this, it's just going to show me presidential. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is just going to be an easy way for her to be able to go in and see, instead of having to click through every single association, I can see it all at once. Follow that? Good for auditing purposes. All right, so let's jump back to our homeowner list. Got another one here. Another little one, but pretty nice impact. So if we go and edit a property record here, notice my property address street number is blank. We now no longer require street numbers. See that? So if I want to pull 4 out, I can pull 4 out and it's just going to show as Privet Drive. And instead of appending a 0 to that, remember how it used to do that?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I know just a couple of you have dealt with that.
No, that's going to make a lot of people happy.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
but that's going to be really nice. So that That's not just on the homeowner level as well. So that is one point that I want to make here. So anywhere in the system, that street number is no longer required. So it's not going to be displaying zeros if you don't have a street number there. Now, if you have a 0, it will display 0, right? So if folks have gone in and put zeros here because the street number was required or whatever, it will show a 0, right? But you don't have to have anything in that field anymore. So that's that one. All right, so I'm going to jump straight to this other one real quick. I had a little bit further down the list, but I feel like this is kind of along the same lines here. Man, I'm so excited about this. So this one is related to our follow-up date and that weird explanation that we have to give folks whenever we say, hey, why does a follow-up date, when I set a follow-up, not match what I see on the screen? So let's go edit this action item, set a follow-up date. I'm going to set it for the 20th. It's the 20th. There's no longer, there's no longer 1 day difference. Yes. Finally. Jeez. All right. So we got that one out of the way. Oh man. All right. So next one, really quick, just kind of an update on the mobile app. We have resolved the issues where the login screen was hanging and some iPad view issues. So I would say, for those of you that are using the mobile app, as you go back through, bring us back up to speed on remaining issues that you see with the mobile app. So I know some folks just weren't using it because the login screen was hanging, and I know other folks weren't using it because you had to, they just couldn't get it to work. So now I have seen that with like the newer versions, and I'm, Martin, if you want to speak to this, or Shell, if you want to speak to this, please feel free. But I know with like some of the newer versions of the mobile app, you have to use it in landscape mode because of something that Apple pushed out with those new versions. But this is my point to say, hey, we've got, I think, most of our iPad issues resolved. So if you guys are using iPads, please let us know if you notice any additional things that need to be resolved.
Is the iPad app now compatible? Because yesterday I tested it with our in-house one and it wasn't working.
And I still have a homeowner calling in every other minute to tell us that it's not working.
Now,
the last time I talked to her was last week, so depending on.
Yeah. Well,
let's just roll it out today.
Well, let me address Addison's first. So first of all, Addison, yes, please try and let us know if you notice things, because it should be resolved. And if you do notice things, we definitely want to know about it. And then for Christina, why is your homeowner using our mobile app?
Not the mobile app,
They're using their iPad to view the portal?
Yes.
Different thing.
Okay.
Yeah, different thing. But if we do want to hear about that issue as well. That hasn't already been shot over our way, Christina.
It has been, yeah. And I told her that 47 times. And she'll keep calling until we fix it.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, this is just particular to like using the mobile app for like inspections and that sort of thing. Okay, anything to add on that, Martin?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Thank you, sir. All right, let's see. All right, so this next one, the hide from portal flag. So, AJ, remember how we were looking at all those board members that had those invoices that were in the void step and they were populating in the portal, and we were thinking that it might be the reason why their portal pages weren't loading? Remember that? I think that's fixed now. So now that hide from portal flag, if it is displayed on an action item step, will not show anywhere in the portal. So it would be nice to confirm with those particular boards, if you want to mimic login as them, whatever, that they are properly loading now and not showing those in the voided step.
Gotcha.
So for everyone's info, we have in an action item setup, we can apply on a particular step of an action item. If we go to the rules, we have a little flag here called hide from portal. And so that is what prevents us from allowing our homeowners to see things that we voided or mistakes that were made on an account. And so we put them in that void step that hides it from the portal, because most of our void steps have that hide from portal flag. But we were finding that that hide from portal flag was not working for invoices specifically for one reason or another. And so that was causing board members to see tons of voided invoices, created a lot of data on the page, took longer to load, especially if they've been with Vanica for years. So we think that that should be resolved now. Any questions on that? Alrighty, while we're talking about the portal, another change that we just made was we basically just killed access to non-live pages. So previously when portal pages were disabled, portal users were able to, if they had access to that particular link, still get to that disabled page. So now when they reach an unavailable URL, they're just being redirected back to the login page. So short explanation, folks are not able to get to our non-live pages anymore. Even if they have that specific URL, they're just going to be redirected to the login page for that association. That makes sense? Any questions on that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All right, so now this is another one I've been excited to tell you guys about. That inspection report crash and the statement crash that we've been seeing when there's an ampersand in the owner's name has been resolved. So those reports are not crashing anymore with those ampersands in the inspection report or in those owner names. So we want to go back through, if we see any further inspection report crashes, definitely want to bring that to our attention ASAP, because that ampersand was what was causing a lot of that.
And you're referring to the violation inspection report, right?
Yep. Yep.
So that's what was causing it. Okay.
Yep. So we're hoping that that is the cause, but I want to make sure that you're aware of that, Addison, so that way if you see anything, please shoot that through that code blue, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, next one. I think Kellyanne, I like this one. Lockboxes can now match owners with account numbers and old account numbers, even if there's leading zeros. Wait, do you guys have associations that use leading zeros, Kellyanne? Hopefully you guys don't.
No, we do not.
That's good. Okay, I have a couple clients that do, and so they were having issues with matching owners with leading zeros, basically. So our lockbox files will now accept leading zeros and recognize leading zeros and can match those successfully. But just for the record, it's probably a bad idea to set up an association code with a leading zero, and you guys are already on that anyways, I think. Okay, let's see. Budget report header. Pull budget report. So our budget report has a fiscal year header in the top left corner up here. And that was previously showing the run date of the report, not the fiscal year. So now it's actually showing the fiscal year instead of the run date. So we got the run date over here, got the fiscal year over here. So a pretty simple change there. We just got the fiscal year in that report. All right. So now this one, I want to start with a question. And that is, do you guys have any service providers that are logging into Vantica and interacting with invoices that you're aware of?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. I didn't think so, but I wanted to make sure about that. So basically what this is we do have some clients, they're giving providers login access to go in and edit invoices. And we were previously showing those logins because they were logging in as like a provider contact as a system. So it's hard to tell like who did what, right? Because it was being logged as system. So now if a service provider is logging into Vantica and they're interacting with the invoices, we are going to log those notes as the provider contact name instead of just system. Doesn't sound like a thing that you guys are doing, but that's what that is. Let's see here. We have placed securities around association addresses. So if we go to association addresses, just kind of a recap, every association should have a physical address, please. Even if you don't have a street address, you should at least have a city, state, and zip and county there, because this physical address is what populates our association list. So what we've done is we've made it such that the association can now only have one physical address, one remittance address, and one correspondence address, because we found some scenarios where users were entering multiple. That was freaking the system out. So now you can only have one of each type. So that's pretty straightforward, right? Any questions on that? And then again, please make sure that every association has a physical address. I'm thinking more specifically towards you guys on the onboarding side, bringing those associations in. Okay, let's see. Next one. Questions?
Yeah, sorry, is that what was causing the duplicate portfolios with, what association is it, Brunswick Forest?
Yeah, I fixed that yesterday with
Yeah.
Villamore. And that's exactly what it was. They had 2 physical addresses, so I just removed one.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Got it.
Well, that's the time, right?
Cool. All right. So the next one is pretty straightforward. And this is just a change that we made to the description that we post in an action item when we post a bank return. So, and I don't know, we might not have time to go through the full process, but just to kind of overview that, the bank return description has been changed from a payment has been reason on date, the original amount, yada, 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 to a payment has been returned blank, what the reason is by date. And then we're showing the original amount was blank and has been debited for whatever the adjustment amount is. So that's just basically a bunch of words to say we made our bank return description make more sense when you're reading it in the action item description. And I feel like Kellyanne would probably be the one closest to that. It was worded weird the way that we had it worded. So we just changed the wording so that it makes more sense now. So if anyone has questions on that, please let me know. But that one's really just a straightforward change to the description that we post on our bank returns. All right, the next one I think is probably going to be geared more towards like our AR team here. So payment methods for previous owners. So previously our homeowner payment method screen would only display the current owner, and it would filter out the previous owners. So even if you go to a previous owner account and you select their payment method, it was still presenting the current owner's information, which effectively made it impossible for us to set up those payment plans on the previous owner accounts, right? So now we do have the ability to generate payment plans for previous owners specifically. So if we go to homeowners payment method and we go to enroll and update that account, we can enroll and update that previous owner account on that new payment plan. So thinking through scenarios for that, like bankruptcies, that type of thing, we can set them up on those payment plans if we need to. Okay. All right, so this other one was kind of minor, but it was basically a security update that we made here. So our service provider securities were set such that even if a user only had view permissions on the service providers, once they got to these pages, they could use these little internal links to click around and get to other sections of the system, right? So even though they didn't have access to maybe the service provider's contact page, they could go through and click these little links in the header and then get to that page. So we just tightened up those securities basically. So with these header links, we're basically just graying them out if you don't have access to the endpoint, right? So we're not letting you click on that to get to that page if you don't have that access. Does that make sense? So again, just tighten up the securities around the service provider stuff. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. A couple quick bug fixes to roll through, and then we'll be wrapped up today here. So the first one, fines on voided inspections. So when an inspection gets voided, it is now fully removing any charges from the owner's ledger that were applied through that inspection. So previously you could void the inspection, but if there were fines associated, we then had to go and remove the fines manually. When we're voiding them through the inspection, those fines are getting removed if the fine was placed through the inspection. Follow me on that?
How will that affect financials?
It's just like a in and out, debiting, crediting the same GL.
Okay. Well,
So
that'll be in a different, if it's in a different period.
Yeah, so the only way that I could see that impacting financials is if you had a fine that was placed at the end of like maybe, 6/30, and then the inspection wasn't dealt with and then maybe voided until a week or so later,
Right.
Well, everything in an open existing inspection is pending and proposed. Even though it appears on the account, the fine is not completely applied until the inspection is processed.
Not necessarily. So those fines were hitting the GL, and if folks weren't going back to remove those were still remaining on the GL. So then the accountants were having to go back through and remove that stuff. So this is just true, like if it's voided, we're basically just reversing entry on that. So concept, violation inspections are working the way that we would intuitively expect. We place a fine through the inspection and then decide, nope, we're voiding it out. During that inspection review, coming back off the account. Let's see. Do you guys have any subledgers set up?
No, not yet.
Okay. Got it. So this one was related to subledgers, just the way that we handle payment allocation. So those are now properly showing on statements, but I don't think you guys had any issues with that. All right, next one here, association company on checks. So the from address on our checks under the association name was always pulling the default company instead of using the association's company. So for smaller management companies, they only have the one company, right? But because you guys have all these different companies, and it looks like you've got one company here that would be potentially impacted by this. If you were cutting checks for a association in the Goldsmith company previously, even though you're cutting it out of the Goldsmith company, the company was showing as CAM in the froms. So we basically got that fixed. So now when you're cutting a check, the company is truly pulling whatever company is listed and not just your guys' default. So that's that one. And then the last one here is related to unused GLs in a journal entry. So when a GL is used, but then afterwards gets changed to unused, the GL entry screen was previously showing blanks for all of those GLs, if you guys have seen that, and they were locked from editing. So this has been fixed such that now those GLs will still show correctly and can be edited. So basically, if you go back and you've got all these journal entries to GLs that are now no longer used, you can go in and actually edit those now and clean that stuff up. Does that make sense, Natalia? Amy? I don't know if you guys have ran into that issue. I know a couple of my other clients did as they were trying to get used to what unused GLs meant. Okay.
Hey, BD, on the screen here, is the remittance address, is that, can we merge that into letters? Is that the lockbox address?
Can you merge the remittance address? So Martin, you might be more familiar with the specific merge tags we have available. Kathy, I'd have to go look through our merge tags to see if we have a merge tag for company remittance address. I know we have one for that generally will pull whatever's defined on the association, and if the association doesn't have an override, it will default to the company. So let's take a look at that.
Because it's the lockbox address that needs to be different in every statement letter.
Yeah, so this remittance address is going to pull what is set up on the association, and if the association does not have an override to that remittance address, then it will default to the company for that association. Does that make sense, Kathy? Meaning, if I go to Presidential Valley for this association, because they've got a override remittance address, I'm not going to show the company remittance address here. I'm going to show this remittance address. But if I delete this as a remittance address override for Presidential Valley, anything that I send out now that uses that remittance address merge tag will default to whatever company is under Presidential Valley. Does that make sense?
But don't we want our return mail, like for letters going to Wilmington, so we can work it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the one letter we were looking at last week had the lockbox address written in. I can't remember which letter it was. It's going to be wrong.
Gotcha. So yeah, it would be worthwhile just confirming under your companies that you have the appropriate remittance address set up there. And then if you're noticing issues where, you know, the wrong address is pulling in, you may very well for that association have a inaccurate remittance address set up erroneously. So that's a good question. Any other questions about that or anything else I've gone over today? Going once.
I have a question not on what you've gone over, but on one of the things stated in the write-up of this release.
Sure.
One of the things that is mentioned in the release notes is the exit history deletion. That if you were editing one action item type into another, it was erasing whatever the last step was or overwriting it.
Mm-hmm.
And the notes say that it's been fixed, but I just had to do some editing yesterday and it did the exact same thing.
But you did it yesterday, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
everything's fixed as of today?
Correct.
Okay.
So let's edit this one into, oh, it looks fun. Yeah. So I can see the previous step that it was in, and then I see the new step.
Okay.
Yep. And that's a good one. I honestly didn't think that anyone would pay attention to that, so I didn't feel like it was worth mentioning. But if you had a question about it, I'm sure my other folks will too. So I'm going to add that to my.
Well, because of my conversion process among 4 different action item types for violations, I have to be conscious of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, any other questions? All right. Well, I appreciate you all's time today and your feedback. Again, if you come up with anything, especially as it's things related to this release, please let us know through that Code Blue channel, and we'll get that stuff addressed as soon as we can. And then if you have any questions, maybe something comes to you after we get done today, please feel free to shoot those my way, and I'll be glad to help however I can.
Hey, BD.
Yes, sir.
The Code Blues that you're talking about, I must have missed that. What are you referring to?
Just a particular.
That's AJ's channel.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any things that you notice through like the release, basically as it's related to the particular release, we're using that channel to facilitate getting those requests prioritized and looked at ASAP. All right, well, I appreciate y'all's time today. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
BD.
you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.